All right, I wanted to make a quick video to show you what we did on Monday and Tuesday, and we went over a Master Connect, but we reviewed the different types of transformations and what they meant. So we have obviously translations, reflections, and rotations on one side here. And the reason I grouped them all together was because all three of these produce congruent shapes. No matter how we slide it, no matter how we flip it or turn it, it's still going to produce the same exact shape, just in a different area of the coordinate plane. So those shapes, again, no matter how we move it, are going to be congruent. They're going to be the same shape and same size. So their angles are going to be the same, their side lengths are going to be the same, everything about them will be the same. The only transformation that will change the size of the shape is a dilation. They are going to produce similar shapes, which means same shape but different size. The way they enlarge them or make them bigger is that you're going to have a scale factor that you're either going to multiply by a number greater than 1 or less than 1. So if you multiply by greater than 1, obviously it's getting bigger. So that's what an enlargement is. And then if you multiply by a fraction or a number that's less than 1, you're going to have a reduction. So that changes the size of the shape. That's the only transformation that changes the size of the shape and makes it non-congruent or similar. So that's what we're going to be going over these questions today. I'll go over each example. We've already done this in class, but I wanted you to see the questions and explain kind of each one of them and what we said in class. All right, so if we look at this question, it's obviously a four-sided figure, quadrilateral, and what it's asking you is if this shape is reflected across the x-axis, it's going to produce a different shape, you know, with the same letters, but the little mark on there, that prime number, all it means is that it's the new shape after it's been transformed. But what we talked about in class was that no matter if you, again, move it, if you reflect it, it's still going to be the same exact shape, just in a different spot on the graph. So that's not going to change anything about its angles or its side lengths. So if they're talking about Q here, then you just have to look at Q in the pictures, why it's circled. And since the original one was 50 degrees, the new one's 50 degrees as well. So that's your answer right here. It's also 50 degrees. All right, number 2 on this one. They gave you 4 different transformations, and it asks you here, which transformations result in a line segment with the same length as the original, which means it's a congruent line segment. So remember, translations, reflections, and rotations, all 3 still produce congruent shapes. So as long as it's not a dilation, it's going to be congruent. So that's why I circled reflection, reflection, rotation, and rotation. That tells me that all of these, like I wrote right here, produce congruent shapes. So that's why your answer is all of the above, or 1, 2, 3, and 4 on that one. All right, on this one, they give us a triangle, and then it's again saying that it's being reflected, this time on the y-axis. And then they want to know what's the new length of BC. And again, if it's reflected, one of the main things I wanted you to know about and make sure you understand with these questions was the fact of what produces congruent shapes. And remember, translation, reflection, rotation, all 3 of those produce congruent shapes. So you just look at the original BC right here, and you notice that they are 1 unit and then 2 units, so 2 units total. If I reflect that over the y-axis, it's not going to change anything about that, so it's still going to be 2 units. So that's why your answer is exactly the same. All right, this one is talking about having a quadrilateral. It gives you a measure of that angle WXY. And this one's telling you that it was rotated and then also translated. But both of those are transformations that do not change the size of the shape or anything about those shapes. So the angle is going to be exactly the same. So if you notice, it was originally 92 degrees, and so is your answer. So the new WXYZ will be the equivalent measure that it was in the beginning. Same type of problem on number 5. This time we're reflecting the triangle across the y-axis again. They're specifically asking for angle PQR, which is why I highlighted it in green there, and it's 74 degrees. And again, if I reflect it and I want the new PQR, it's the same exact amount, 74 degrees. All right, on number 6, we had to look at 2 different people or students saying that they could transform their figures twice and that it would, we're looking, does it produce congruent shapes or not? So when we looked at Josie said that she would do a reflection and then a rotation. So that tells me that those 2 things do produce congruent shapes. So that's why we put a check mark there. When we looked at Kelvin, we noticed that the first thing he did was a dilation, which tells me right now that that is not going to produce a congruent shape because it says we're going to multiply by a scale factor of 2, which means this shape is going to actually get bigger. So that's why we put an X here, that it does not create congruent shapes. So if we looked at our answers, first off, choice A and B either say both or neither. We know we have one of each, so that's why we marked out those. Now we had to look at our choice B, and it says that Josie's transformations result in a figure congruent to the original figure, but Kelvin's do not, which is exactly what we said. We said this one produces congruent shapes, this one does not. All right, so that's in the correct order. C, if you notice, it's kind of backwards. So choice B was definitely your answer on number 6. All right, number 7 specifically says that it's undergoing a translation and a reflection. Again, does not change the size or shape of the shape. So we're definitely going to choose the second choice here. Some things that we talked about in class were we have not said anything about collinear. We haven't talked about right triangles, and that in order to say it's a right triangle, we have to know some things about their angles. And we don't know anything about their angles, so or their side amounts. So we don't know any exact measurement, so we can't tell that by what they give us. So I know it's not that one. Also, you've never heard me say the words perpendicular hypotenuses. So that's definitely, they just put some words together to make a answer choice. So none of those should make sense to you. The only one that we have talked about is the fact that the triangles are going to be congruent. So that is definitely your answer. All right, on number 8, the main thing you need to see on this right here is saying it's going to produce a new image that is longer than the original line. So if something's changing about it, that means it's not going to be a congruent figure. It's going to get bigger or longer. The only thing that changes out of a transformation that changes the size is dilation. So that's why we chose A here. All right, on number 9, we just want to know which figure pairs are congruent. Remember, congruent means same shape and same size. So that's why we chose group 1 and group 3. So choice C was your answer. All right, number 10, we had to choose what happened to this shape. So I want you to look at it and notice, and look at the options, the answer choices, because each one of these, if you notice, I underlined it, says a rotation, a rotation, a rotation, a rotation. What we need to see is that what's happening. How many times is this shape turning? So if you notice, it starts here. And if we were only turning once or 90 degrees clockwise, it would have to end up somewhere here, which is not where it's at. So that's why 90 degrees clockwise is not your answer. All right, if we look at 180, or well, let's talk about 90 degrees counterclockwise. That would mean one turn backwards, so it would have to be over here. So that's why this last choice is out. So the 2 with 90 degrees are definitely out. If I look at 180, that means it's turning twice. So that means I'd go turn here once and then twice, which is exactly where it is. And if you notice, the other option is 270. That means it's got to turn 3 times. So 1, 2, 3, and it would have to end up over here. So the only one that makes sense is that it turns twice or it turns 180 degrees. So that is your choice. That's your answer choice you should choose. All right, on number 11, we're going to look at these 2 shapes. They're wanting to know what transformation could have occurred. So when we were in class, we kind of just went through the choices and looked and seen which one made sense. So the first answer choice says it rotated 180 degrees clockwise. That would tell me that this original shape had to turn twice, had to turn 2 times, so that it would turn, and it would have to be 90 degrees would be here, 180 would be here. So your second shape would be over here. So that's why we said that one didn't make any sense. The next one says reflected about the x-axis, which means I'd have to take this shape and reflect it, flip it over the x-axis, and it would have to end up over here, which again does not make any sense. All right, if we look down at the last choice, the reason we marked it out is because it says dilation. If I look at that shape, it's the exact same size and shape, so it did not change that way. So a half means that it would be like half as big, so it would be much smaller. So that one does not make sense. Then we could zoom in on our shape if we think it's the translated one, and you can see it says 2 units right, 1 unit down. So if you notice on each point, if I start with S, I'd go 1, 2, and then down 1. R, 1, 2, down 1. Q, right 2, down 1. Same thing with P, right 2, down 1. So that tells me it's definitely just slid over and down a little bit. And that would be your translation. So that is choice C on that one. All right, last one on this. Really, honestly, they told you right off the bat, if you read in this paragraph up here at the top, the main thing, what I highlighted, it says the two figures are not congruent. That tells me that it has to be a dilation, because a dilation is the only thing that produces, only transformation that produces a figure that is not congruent. And if we look through the 4 student responses, there's only one that says dilation. So that tells me that Jaylyn was my correct answer. Okay. All right. I'm going to send this video with you, and I'm also going to send a Mastery Connect code that you will go put these answers in for you to get credit for this assignment. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions. Just send me a message. Thank you.